Hey everybody, we're going to get started right at the top of the hour. Got a whirlwind of activity going this morning, so we're going to jump right in. Welcome everybody. We got episode 17 of our 20 for 20 webinars. We are almost to the end. We've got 3 more after these. One of them looks like it's going to be a special edition on our new report 1797 for auto-populating a good chunk of ICS 214. So stand by for an announcement on that. Probably by the end of the week. I think we're going to do it next Tuesday or Wednesday. But for those of you that have participated in these before, thanks for returning. If you're first time here joining us for one of these webinars, welcome. We're glad to have you. And today's topic is going to be on powerful prevention practices, especially as they pertain to NFPA 1300. So with that, let's jump right in. And I'm going to have my traditional poll questions coming up here in just a minute. And let me make sure you can all see my screen. You should see the welcome slide. If you're having any trouble hearing me or seeing the screen, just let me know in the question section and I'll do whatever I can to rectify it. GoToMeeting, like all of the online meeting apps out there, their servers are being taxed because everybody's using them. But so far we've had good luck and good experience with GoToWebinar. So hopefully that luck will stay with us today. So the plan for the next 30 to 60 minutes will be on an introduction. We'll do a quick introduction. I'll find out if any of you are new to the emergency reporting family or interested in becoming part of it. That will determine how much we get into the emergency reporting background and system features. And then we'll jump right into a few slides in a deck here on powerful prevention practices. And then we'll go straight into a demo account to explore how you can take advantage of what emergency reporting has to offer. So first things first, got a couple questions for you guys. First one, if you've been here before, you know this one. Are you currently a customer or are you interested in joining the emergency reporting family? And I know you're all busy, so if you're multitasking, take a look up real quick from your screen and we'll get everybody to vote in 2, 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna close. All right, looks like we've got just ER customers today, so that will expedite any background of the system. You guys are well aware of who we are and what we do, so that's excellent. Next up, for the participants today, are you a career agency, volunteer, combo, or federal DoD? All right, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Man, we've got a nice combination today. 2/3 career, 1/3 combo, nice. And because of today's topic, need to know, does your agency have a community risk reduction program? Yes, we have a structured, defined one. No, we maybe just do prevention, even though that's a core part of community risk reduction, or sort of, we're working on it. Okay, closing the poll, 3, 2, and 1. Nice. Okay, so you guys already have most of you already have a solid program, and if you're not, you're probably the one or two of you that are in the sort of we're working on it category. That's probably the most common one out there in the broader fire service. And so what I'm hoping to show you today is what NFPA 1300 talks about, so you can kind of ramp up your program even more. And those of you that have one can refer to this document and benchmark against the quality of your program. So excellent. Last one. So thinking about those of you that have one, and then of course those of you that sort of have one, what is the most significant challenge? Having a defined plan, having enough trained personnel to run that program, managing your data for that program, getting funding for it, or is it something else? And then you can just type that in the questions panel within the GoToWebinar control panel itself, the question section. Great, almost everybody's voted. Anybody else still need to vote? Closing it on 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the most significant challenge is trained personnel and defining that plan. So I want to be able to address both of those today. Now the training comes with what's available in your community and what's available out there in the broader fire service community as far as taking classes on community risk reduction. You're going to have different personnel that are specializing in risk assessment, versus inspectors versus community educators. And so that's probably beyond the scope of today's presentation, but I can talk a little bit about the plan. And then thankfully, because you, well, most or if not all of you are ER customers, you have a platform to effectively manage your data for that. And I'm going to show you ways to really get a lot out of it in our system, both on the inspection prevention side, as well as on the community risk and community education side. So should be a good presentation today and good topics. As always, please ask questions through the your control panel for GoToWebinar. We want this to be an exchange of ideas as well. So chime in and I will answer them as we go through it today. All right. So that's, always hit it too fast. That's me. Those of you that have been on these presentations know that I spent 22 years in the fire service in Southern Arizona, retired as a battalion chief back in 2013. Been using emergency reporting since 2004 and was a trainer in 2011 part-time while I was still on the job. And then upon my retirement, I was a full-time, both domestic United States trainer, then a Department of Defense and international trainer, and got to frankly see the world. It was quite a blessing and thoroughly enjoyed it. Still traveled a lot. As of January I was, and of course now I'm working from home, as many of you may be if you're not on the trucks or in the office for your agencies. And so I look forward to getting back on the road and working face-to-face with our customers and getting to conferences and trade shows. Then I was promoted to Business Development Analyst back in 2013. Also, my wingman today, at least for a few minutes, he's got to break away for a meeting, is our lead trainer, Mac McElroy. You probably, if you attended any of our virtual Thursday training sessions, you know Mac. He also is, just like me, was very active in traveling around the country for training events, and we're both stuck at home right now. So I know we're getting a little bit of cabin fever, but at least we get to interact with all of you this way. All right, I'm going to skip all this. Why? Because you guys know all about us. And if you have any specific questions about upgrading, system issues, questions, and things like that, certainly reach out directly to support. I'm happy to answer questions too, unrelated to today's presentation topic, but things keep getting better and better. We are well over 7,000 departments now, and this is changing daily. It gets updated, I believe, weekly, but this was a week or two ago, and you can see the repository, 36 million incidents and counting. And so we're just grateful to all of you for being part of the emergency reporting family, and I imagine some of your neighboring agencies have come on thanks to your good words about us, or maybe you heard good things from a neighboring agency and came on board. So I want to thank you for that. All right, there's our system. You guys know that. It's really about 19 modules if you count like rig checks and the daily log, but 16 core modules. And here's what we're going to get into today. So we have an objective, and I like to keep these short, sweet, and very focused. So today is, how can I improve my agency's community risk reduction and prevention responsibilities to better adhere to NFPA 1300? And 1300, we need to just talk a little bit about it. It is an NFPA document, as obviously it states in front of it. And we'll talk about Inspect DR in a minute. I got the two slides mixed up. And so we want to go over some high points of NFPA 1300. And I highly recommend, if you don't have a subscription to NFPA, that your department looks into it, because these documents, whenever you are deciding to do a program, whether it's fleet management, purchasing vehicles, standards for your personnel, there's probably something in NFPA that can guide you. And the documents, while they're not exciting reading per se, it's important reading. There's no pictures, so for us firefighters, we're kind of stuck. We're going to have to suck it up and read. But nonetheless, they are super important documents and will help you make the case for improving your program. Sorry about having the slides mixed up here. This should have come earlier before the one I just showed you, but I do want to mention, since this is about prevention and community risk reduction, that we do have our offline capable Inspect DR app. Some of you may use it. In a nutshell, this app is a standalone app that is downloadable from the iOS, Android, or Windows stores, and directly syncs with your ER account, but allows you to complete inspections and update occupancy data offline if you need to. That's the biggest, most important part of this. Not only being tablet friendly, as you can see the user interface there, but the key thing with this one is, if you're in an area where internet connectivity could get sketchy, this allows you to continue working without worrying about your connection, and then you'll sync upon getting a solid connection, all of the changes made to an inspection and or the occupancy itself. And your regional rep can give you more information on cost and so forth. Okay, so the standard that we're going to talk about today before we get into the system is NFPA 1300. So here's the purpose, all right? It's about community risk assessment. And we didn't know, community risk assessment, we were doing it before it was called community risk assessment. Your prevention division, right? They want to prevent fires. They want to prevent and reduce risk. That's what their purpose is. One might argue that that division saves more lives than the operations guys, although the operations guys will fight that one. I would, but I think the data will show that having a solid prevention, and in this case, a full comprehensive community risk assessment plan in place is truly saving lives. And we had a couple, last week we had a session all about NFPA, I'm going to probably botch the number, but I think it's 1600, that is all about disaster preparedness. No, that's the right number, disaster preparedness and mitigation. And it cites right in there, pandemics, epidemics, things like that, and having a plan. Now, can you plan for everything? No, but having a risk reduction plan helps you prioritize for your specific community. And I'll let you read that. Okay, so looking at what encompasses a risk assessment. Part of what we directly address is your building stock, right? All of the occupancies within your jurisdiction, the hazards that go along with it, any economic concerns, and you can see now, while America is not burning, as the 1973 study mentioned, we are having tremendous economic challenges right now. How does that affect your community risk assessment when it comes to fire and life safety? There are components there for sure. Then what does the past, lost, and event history look like? And thankfully, based on our vision product, you can address that. And then of course, using the incidents module, you can see very quickly historical responses to a structure, and then critical infrastructure systems. And our system does allow you to document critical infrastructure and identify those buildings very easily. Just some key elements here. If you haven't looked at this document and you are responsible for your prevention division in any way, shape, or form, this is an opportunity to get better versed on what is the expectation from a legal perspective. Now, granted, these are standards, not regulations. However, many entities, yours may be one of them, could have adopted this. And if it's adopted by a legal entity, it in effect has the effect of law. And then certainly, God forbid any of you are brought into court, this will be the standard that is brought up to address whether or not you attempted to adhere to it. So good stuff here. Okay, so reporting. This is chapter 7.6. And so creating an annual report on your community risk reduction plan. This is huge, and it's also addressed in the 10th edition of the Center for Public Safety's FESA manual, Fire and Emergency Services, I'm gonna botch the name of it, assessment program, right? So that is key in an annual report. And annual reports not only tell you where you've been, but can also address where you're going, and helps communicate to stakeholders what your needs might be: funding, manning, machines, materials, and of course, the money. So it takes money to run this. And I imagine some of you are going to have to even make a more compelling case if you're a jurisdiction that relies on sales taxes for part of your revenue, because with the economy in its current state, people either aren't or unable to spend because of our social distancing and sheltering in place, shall we say. Some of your budgets may be challenged in the months ahead. So being able to document what you've been doing helps propel your case, and hopefully will help preserve the funding thus far. So the 5 whys, I brought this in here because as you work on your program, now while this may not be something the information and the data can come directly from what's being entered and analyzed in emergency reporting, but I like to mention this because we do this in our organization as a software company. Whenever something breaks in the system or we run into problems, we do what's called the 5 whys to try to get to the root cause. And sometimes you got to ask it at least 5 times. All right, and there's an example of Why is there a rise in individuals suffering fire-related injuries? Well, because the smoke alarms aren't providing detection. Well, why? Because batteries aren't missing. Why is that? Well, they're taking the batteries out of the alarms. And if I can attest to being guilty of this, or at least being part of association by guilt, because we had a station, my department, where it was a part of a strip mall. We were in a temporary location, and we did not have hardwired smoke detectors. We had battery powered ones, and sure enough, battery died. No 9 volts were available. So guess what? We don't want the chirping every minute. So the battery was taken out. I come on shift one morning, and there it is on the wall, the smoke detector with the battery door hanging open with no battery. And so we need to practice certainly what we preach. But there's that example of the 5 whys. Think of, if you have kids, think of your kids back when they were toddlers and as they got into early elementary school, they're always asking why. This is a chance to get back to that time and really drill down into those root causes. And you may get to solutions much more quickly if you're willing to ask some of these tough questions and with the whys behind it. So I brought this example out directly from NFPA 1300. Okay, data collection. So this is in the annex. And so I'm mentioning this from a public education perspective because our system does a fantastic job of the first 2 there, counting the number of attendees. So I call them civilians, so non-agency personnel participating, number of inspections conducted, and pre and post test comparisons. So we actually do that one really well in the sense of how our inspections module works when you go out and do a re-inspection, because then you can see what they did, what they failed initially, and then what happened afterwards. And then certainly those last 4 can be accomplished and loaded into emergency reporting. While we are not like a Survey Monkey company where you can do those surveys, I've seen departments where they either send out surveys or they send mail-in surveys or they send out links to conduct an online survey post-event, such as a safety talk or a big presentation, or even after a response, for those calls that we go to that aren't always critical calls. It's a good way to get feedback from the community on your performance. And this is directly addressed here in Annex 7 of NFPA 1300. So in NFPA 1300, if some of you are still working on refining your plan, there's others you can search online for sure, but in Annex B of 1300, there's an example from Chesterfield Fire and EMS about their community risk reduction plan. And so if it's part of an NFPA document, chances are it was pretty well vetted to ensure that the elements that NFPA 1300 would want you to have are in it. And so this will give you a great opportunity to benchmark against your own. But I would also recommend reach out to neighboring agencies and look at others that are online, because a lot of agencies will just post them. All right, let's jump into the system. And I want to respect your time. I know you're super busy today, so I don't expect this to take a full hour. And so I want to get into some of the elements that our system can do to help you manage your program. And please don't hesitate to ask any questions as we move on. Okay, first things first. Oh goodness, I forgot to clear out all my pages. Here we go. There we go. Too much going on. All right, let's jump into the system. Okay, first area I want to go to is the library. And this is pretty straightforward and seemingly simple for sure, but you want to be able to get buy-in for this program. And the buy-in comes from all levels of the organization, regardless of whether they're in your community risk reduction division, prevention division. So think operations people, admin people. This is a place where you can store any documents that describe your program, describe expectations, any unique forms that you might have. And the prevention forms, inspection forms are going to be within the occupancy module. But here in the library is where you store what the program's all about, policies and procedures, workflows, any other forms that you might need for the program, such as surveys, car seat check forms, things like that that you're going to use when you're out and about in the community. And you want to keep this as your source of truth for everybody in the organization, because as long as you've granted them read-only privileges, which most people will have for this module, they will be able to then access this document, not be in the dark, and be on the same page with everybody and not having to go search servers, search filing cabinets for the documents that you need. And it's just a matter of creating those categories. These up here are for NFPA 1500. And so maybe some of it would be under fire department administration, but you certainly can, and I would recommend creating your own category and then creating your own, loading your own items into that particular category. You can also create a subcategory. So maybe one would be called community risk reduction forms, community risk reduction policies, annual reports can be stored here. And so take advantage of this as an opportunity to get everybody on the same page and to be able to have a single source of truth that they can go to instead of scrambling on servers and trying to find the latest versions and things like that. And so managing this is very easy. Again, you can create a category here. I'm going to create a subcategory. We're going to call this CRR forms. I'm going to add that. And then when I expand, I've got the subcategory here. And then within that subcategory, I can go ahead and add a document, or I can add a URL. Sometimes you might want to link out somewhere to a video or whatnot. You can do that. We'll add that document, and it will prompt you to select the file. And you can choose a file and load and go. And users then will not have all of these controls because you're managing it, but they will have the ability to download a document if they wish to view it. Any questions on the library or any ideas on how you're using the library for your community risk reduction and prevention programs? It's a pretty easy module to use, but I want to bring it up because sometimes it's just a pain trying to find things, and this will eliminate that pain. Okay, no questions, pressing on. Let's go next into the occupancy module. All right, a couple key things here on navigating it. This is our new look, and there are controls here that we didn't used to have, which is kind of cool. If you click on the gear icon, you can change it from compact to comfortable, okay? And then you can also select which columns you wish to display, which ones are going to be usable for you. Not only can you do that, you can also drag and drop and move them around. So while it's not obvious you can do this, I can't wait for the rest of the system to have this, because then I can organize things the way I want them to be. I want the ID over here, I want the name, address, maybe I want to move the type over here. Definitely want next inspection date, maybe right here. Whoops, I let it go too soon. And so you can play to your heart's content to get it exactly the way you want it, okay? And we got a lot of feedback when we changed over. We learned some good lessons, and so if you were any one of those people that sent us feedback, thank you for that. It helped us improve this tremendously. All right, so I want to go find a building, and I always go to this one. So my Archer Ale House, we're going to go in and look at it. And so what I want to go over here, especially as it pertains to what we're talking about today, is the following. We're going to talk about inspections, and we're going to talk about the hazards. I'm going to go to hazards first, and then we're going to talk about actions as well. Hazards. This, now you may be looking at your account and go, man, I don't have that, and I don't have vision. This is an upgrade to your account. It is part of our vision, what we call our vision package, and it allows you to apply a risk assessment score to all of your buildings in your jurisdiction, and it allows you to have a consistent assessment tool that, if applied consistently, which part of that is the training, will allow you to get a very good idea of where your higher risk occupancies are within your community. And what's really nice about this is it color codes it. And on the map, it will show you the color of the building based on its risk level. So greens are pretty good to go, blues are pretty good to go, lower risk. But if we've got oranges and reds, those are much higher risk. And if you notice on the map, there's a cluster of them, then maybe that's an opportunity to focus and prioritize your limited resources to enhance the overall safety. And perhaps even if the building itself, whether it's industrial, chemical, it may not lower its score in the sense that it's going to change the nature of the occupancy, but your people and the people, your people, and then the civilians working there can become safer based on your efforts. So in the vision, in the hazards tab, it prompts you to enter many required fields. And as you enter these fields, there's an algorithm that's calculating a score based on what you answer. Typically, when you get the responses up high will contribute less to the risk than if you answer down low. So you'll notice that if you change anything as you're going through this. But property value, is it just a personal family loss? Maybe it's a small apartment complex. Business loss, you know, your typical mom and pop standalone perhaps. Moderate, strip malls. Severe, some of your bigger businesses or industrial base. And then of course, a major loss of those bigger, even bigger businesses or cultural or historical properties. Life safety. So we get a lot of questions as we go through this is how do I answer this consistently? So for example, if I go to a hotel, say I go to a Hampton Inn in your jurisdiction, if an engine company goes in, prevention person goes in, will they walk out with the same score? And the answer is hopefully yes. Because when we look at a question like occupancy load, they should know going in that I'm not basing it on the load during the day. In the case of a hotel, why? Because it's much lower. I need to go with worst case. So we would select, in this case, 300 or more on a typical hotel. We want to address not necessarily is, but what could be. Then of course your occupancy access is for the fire department, which means can the department get to all sides of the building? Now, thankfully, we have, and again, you can review this video, but don't forget here, under help, when you click that one's, I'm in Safari and it's not working, but in support, it should take me to the page on the vision and the OVAP scoring. And so you've got to log in and then you can type in OVAP. If you're in another browser other than Safari, that help button should work. So I apologize for that. Safari's got some nuances and that happens to be one of them. I also have a document that if you're interested, I can send you that summarizes examples and how to answer these. That will help guide you in teaching your personnel to answer it correctly. Occupant mobility, of course, again, I would argue that a hotel should be asleep, okay, because that's going to increase the score. Not everybody is awake, and again, we're going to worst case. Certainly your assisted living facilities, nursing homes, will be up here, non-ambulatory or restrained for sure. Alarm systems, exits, and conforming or non-conforming mean are they conforming to the code that you've adopted for your community? Risks. All right, and this is the last section. And what I will do is just briefly go through them. Regulatory oversight. What's your inspection plan for that particular occupancy? What's the human activity around that during that building? The experience. This one causes a lot of concern, and I want to mention something here. The best way to answer this is not how many calls you run on that building, because if you think about it, we're probably not running tons of calls to any given building all the time. Now, we do have our frequent flyer calls that we go to for sure, but what I want you to take into consideration when you answer this experience question is buildings like it, and then how often do you visit that building? So say a supermarket that you run and get groceries for during shift. Chances are, if you have good situational awareness, you're not going there to just get groceries for dinner that night. You've got a pretty good idea on the egress points, any unique construction features that will make it difficult for fighting fire, any unique construction within the building, you know, false ceilings, things like that. Hopefully you're aware of that. And so maybe you can say it's daily or weekly because you have a level of familiarity with that building that in the event of fighting something there, your knowledge will help make your crews and any rescues and personnel needing rescue a safer and a greater possibility for a good outcome. So keep that in mind. This is kind of not just incidents, but your overall familiarity with the building or like buildings. That's kind of how I teach that to get a more accurate score. If you never go to that building for anything, for calls, pre-plans, inspections, then certainly it can be considered a rare occurrence. And some of those may be facilities that, because of their nature in your jurisdiction, I know we serve a lot of DoD customers, but certainly you may have an industrial complex that they limit access. That may indeed be a rare occurrence, and you just don't know enough about that structure, and thus that will increase the score. Capacity to control based on your resources, the types of hazards in the structure, overall fire load, and we give examples because you might think, I might think of Costco's free burning and you might just think it's combustible, the contents. So what is it? And you have that conversation, but we also give you guidelines for that. Available water flow, and that compares it to available versus required, okay? So you can see when I'm below this, and we get questions on this, if this number is below the needed fire flow, the risk goes up. As soon as this meets or exceeds this number, then the risk comes down. Let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, needed fire flow, meets the sprinklers, that came down, and that dropped the needed fire flow. So if I click no, okay, see how it stayed the same, but if I go back and drop that down to 2,000, my score goes up. And this did not used to do that on our old system. It updates as you make changes. You would have to click save to make the change, so it's kind of cool. It refreshes in real time. Any questions at all on this part of your community risk reduction program and addressing overall risk on a per occupancy basis? Question, there is one. Excellent, let me take a look at that. I'm going to send you that, Anthony. So what I will do is I will get that document and get where the guidelines are for fire load, because we have a really good document on that, and maybe, just maybe, I can find it really fast and put it in the handouts. While I'm doing that, I'll find it. I've got it. I just got to get because I grabbed it from our system. I'll find it. I'll email it to you. I don't want to eat up too much of today's presentation trying to find it, but I do have it, and I'll get that over to you. What you can do if you have vision, let me know if you're in a different browser than Safari, if the help button works, because that's where that document used to be, and it'll take you right to it immediately. We can check and see if it's in the support pages also. It may be there as well, but I'll get it to you. I'll send you an email after today's presentation. In fact, do me a favor, Anthony, just shoot off an email right now to me, tom@emergencyreporting.com, and I'll get that over to you. Thanks for that question. Anyone else? All right, back over to inspections. So here under inspections, the key takeaway here is, and I'm not going to give you a tutorial or training on using the inspection module. I think you probably are all fairly well versed on it, but I am going to show you one key thing that is part of what NFPA 1300 is asking for, and a couple nuances that you may or may not know about in the system when you set it up. So first of all, under settings, all right, under inspection forms, if you have agency friended anybody nearby or in your state, and they have friended you, when you go to add a new inspection form, you can see I'm going to scroll down. These are all the forms in my account now. But as I keep going, you're going to see something here. Get to the bottom. I'm for agency friends with our sales team demo account, and probably some others here too, unless there's just tons of forms here. But basically, you're seeing all of the forms in their ER account. You can't edit their forms, but you can use their form to create your own form. So if you're in an area where you're following the same fire code and everybody likes your form, you could share it with them, and it prevents them from having to do all of the extra keyboard strokes and mouse clicks to create the new form from scratch. So now we've got another form, another department we're friends with, and let's just say, and I have no idea what these forms are, but we'll try them. Let's go with our support new annual. I'm going to call this test for 2020. I'm going to click add, and then now I scroll down, and I can go in and edit it, but it took all of that form, categories and questions, and now I get to go fine tune it for my agency. Please take advantage of it. Be the first to share with others, and hopefully that return will be favored to you. Or how did I say that? Hopefully that favor will be returned to you. All right, that's a little bit on the forms. Two other things that are very commonly overlooked, okay? One, inspection results. Actually, I've got three things for you. One, on inspection results, here under the result, this is at the very end of the inspection, what the overall inspection is. You have two choices here, these two check boxes. One allows a follow-up, one requires a reinspection. If you select the bottom one and the written inspection you just did, so you did an annual, you go out today and it is a citation issued, the system will not let you lock that inspection, the one you just did today, now, until you schedule a reinspection, okay? And so once you schedule it, then you can lock and close out that inspection. If you just select this one, and you do not have to select both, it's not going to help you to select both. Pick one or the other. This one will let you close out that inspection, okay, without having to reschedule it, but it will give you the little button there that says do follow-up inspection, and I will show you that in a minute. Any questions on that? Okay, next up, inspection types. I hope you are taking advantage of our logbook. And if you are, you know that there are 6 things that automatically populate in our logbook when you complete them in the system. Incidents, completed maintenance requests and rig checks, completed inspections, which is where we're at now, completed training, and completed events. 6 things. But the neat thing about inspections is that instead of a basic activity code that encompasses all training, which is fine, it works perfectly, this lets you fine tune your activity code per inspection type, and this is where you edit it. And so you have to create this from this. It's in admin. So that list, the activity code list, is created here in admin. Okay. We're going to go over here to daily log settings. This is your activity code list. I always like doing this. Put an INSP in front of each one. So in the drop-down list, they're bundled together. Your inspectors don't have to find the alphabetical order. We got annual, we've got engine company, we've got this and that. It's all together. So prefix it. All right. That's a unique activity code. And then the other thing, just as a little sidebar, the other 5 things are here. So as long as you have a default activity code for these 5 items, anytime they are completed in the system, it will automatically populate in your daybook. So it allows you to take advantage of that daybook pretty straightforward. And there are some terrific reports that you can extract from the daybook as well. So keep that in mind, and then right here is where you can tie an activity code to a specific inspection type. And my recommendation is for every inspection type that you have a unique activity code. Why? Because then when I can run a report, I can see how many hours and how much time has been spent as a prevention division on each type of these inspections, or I can see how much time individual inspectors are spending on these types of inspections. So it's pretty cool. Last one I want to bring out is here, and you may or may not be aware of it, but I want to bring it up anyway. Inspection question observation values. Do not limit yourself to just pass fail here. Build this list up concisely, but definitively. Why? Because this also determines what gets printed when you go to print an inspection form for the customer or for internally. In other words, I don't want just pass fail. When I want to say, oh, corrected upon initial inspection, corrected during reinspection. There's also reports that let you know how often these responses have occurred during your inspections. And so if you're an agency that just currently has pass fail on the individual inspection question observation values, I strongly recommend that you reconsider building this to something more comprehensive. Now, this doesn't have to be a list of 50, but it certainly should be a list of, at least a half a dozen. It just gives you so much more flexibility in communicating both to the customer and then reporting internally your observation values and violation types. All right, got a couple questions that popped in. Let's answer those. So Andrew, I'm going to show you that here because we're going to go to the events here, and I will show you which report shows you event civilian attendance. That's coming up. And then under Stephen's asking, is it possible to track the number of failed questions under the inspection form using the reports tab? So we'll look at the reports tab, and I'll show you where you can get reports to show failed questions here in just a minute. Hopefully that will answer your question, Stephen. And don't worry, Andrew, I'll show you in the events module here coming up. So questions on any of the settings. Now we could spend a whole training session going through how to set everything up here, but I wanted to hit some high points that pertain to community risk reduction and your overall inspections that are commonly overlooked when customers set this up. Okay, cool. Let's go do an inspection real quick. And I just want to show you one key thing here. And then I'll talk about actions. So when we go to do an inspection, you can of course set up a schedule, but we're just going to start a new one right now. And what I want to show you, this is the old UI, this will eventually be changing soon. So we're going to start the inspection now. Select your inspector, inspection type. You can use any form with any inspection type, at least on the initial inspection. I'm going to fill in the contact information. We're going to go through and do our form. Now, here's something, and you can run this by your legal department, but I have run into this during my training sessions that some people, they just go in and, okay, if something fails, it fails, but they leave everything else blank. Then the question, a lawyer could question, well, did you even look at that? And just like being a medic, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So I always like to do this right out of the gate. I go to check all, I do a bulk operation, set everything to pass. And as I'm going through, if I'm a good inspector, I'm checking all of these anyway. And then if I notice that the exit sign's not good, I can change that observation value to violation. And of course, we would put in here, no exit sign on Charlie's side exit, take a picture, load it, and this works beautifully on a tablet because when you know the mobile operating systems allow you to take a picture and use it immediately, whereas I've got to take the picture, find it on my computer here, choose a file, then upload it, and away we go. There is not a limit to how many photos you can put in here. On Inspect ER, that limit is 3 just to due to synchronization. All right, then we get to the end of the inspection. And my inspection result, now remember, I set fail and citation issued to require a reinspection. Now, because I know that we're enhancing this workflow, but because I already know that, I have to schedule a single inspection. Otherwise, when I get to this page at the bottom, I can't finish this inspection because a manual inspection is required as follow-up for this inspection result. So this will take me back to page 3. So I'm going to schedule it for 30 days out. We're going to do a reinspection, and we're going to do it at 1300, for example. Click Save. So now the system is happy. I can go in and send an email, complete the inspection, and then remember I mentioned those observation values? Anything that appeared on this form will be listed here, and you want to give yourself flexibility because all the customer needs to see is what the violation was. So when I go to select just that observation, I have a significantly shorter form and less pages to view and print out. And so what that looks like is this. I would have a picture in there. My signatures would appear. I didn't get signatures yet because I just wanted to show you guys. And there we are, a nice in this case, 1 page. Once my signatures pop in or pictures, it would be a 2-page. But this is easily communicated to the customer and also makes it easy for you all to use. All right, of course, signatures, you guys know how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and complete this inspection. And because I either allowed or in this case required a follow-up inspection, you're going to see here that I can do a follow-up inspection. That's key. Why? Because just like NFPA 1300 says, to be able to do, to see kind of a before and after in a nutshell, that one reference I mentioned, I can go start a brand new inspection, but this brand new inspection, I can change the type. It is reinspection. I'm going to do it now, but you'll notice that everything, whoops, system is smarter than me. That wouldn't be a first. It's going to preserve all of my prior violations and pictures, so that now I can go in and state that it is corrected during reinspection. Take my picture of the after, the correction, and corrected upon reinspect. See photo, and then click that, and then watch what happens here. This is a pass. I get to the next page. I don't have to do a follow-up inspection. In fact, it doesn't require it, doesn't even need it or allow. I might allow it. I don't think it does because there's no reason to. Put in my password, and I've got the original, I've got the reinspection, and we are good to go. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, got one more question from Anthony. Are there any plans to be able to have a default answer to inspection questions? I will ask. I don't know about that, Anthony. So I think what Anthony's asking everybody is that when you get to this page, let's see, let's unlock it, back to edit it. So correct me if I'm wrong, when you're on this page, you can set a default so it automatically fills all of these for you, and then you go in and make changes instead of having to do a bulk operation. Is that what you mean, Anthony? And just type in and I'll look for your response here momentarily. Okay, so to close us out, I want to go to the events module. Oh, we can't go there yet. We have to do actions. Actions. So the actions tab, I want you to think of this as your electronic paper trail. We have a customer, and I shout out to them every time we talk about this, Woonsocket, Rhode Island. They do an amazing job in documenting their buildings. This is your electronic paper trail, plans intake, phone calls made, emails sent. It is a running log of anything that goes on with that building that's not necessarily a permit, not an inspection, but that you want to document it. You can create that form. In fact, I'll show you what theirs looks like. Actions. Actions tab, best practice. So let me show you this real quick because I think there's value here. It is an underutilized part of our system. Why? Because it just requires more data entry. This particular agency, I'll make it bigger so you can see it, but I was really impressed with what they're doing, and they said I could share it, and so I am. So these are their action codes, and this is what they're tracking. Now, you may not go into this detail, but these are examples of what they're using in that actions tab. And they stick to it. Yes, it's a little bit more work. So it's an organizational decision if you wish to do it. But boy, if they have a phone call or someone goes to that fire crew goes to that building, they want to know what's gone on, they're going to know it. They're going to know everything that's happened with that building, in addition to inspections and permits. So I wanted to share that with you. That's the actions. And so it's as simple as adding an action today, action code, pick it, description, choose a file. You can upload images or documents here, which is kind of cool. Okay. Yes, Andrew, I'll send that list along with the guidelines for the OVAP score, and you bet. What I'll do, everybody that participated, you'll get an email from me later today with those two files. Any questions here on occupancy? Again, today we really just talked about inspections. We talked about hazards, the OVAP score, the risk assessment score, again, because today's topic is NFPA 1300, and we talked about the actions tab as a way to do a better documentation of any issues or contacts and things associated with that building. Okay, very good, very, very good. Oh yeah, there was a question about reports. We got to answer that one. So Stephen, number of failed questions under using the reports tab. So for inspections under the report tab. So now I call them observation values, but the system calls them violations. So I'm going to do a search on that page, and I imagine you guys are all pretty tech savvy, but if you're ever looking through a PDF, Word doc, online on a browser, you need to find a word fast and lots of text, Do Control F on a Windows machine, Command F on a Mac. It'll pull up the search features. On Firefox, I think it's down below. On Safari, it's up here in the corner. And see, these are all the reports that you can use to determine the number of failed questions. And it lets you, I like this one. I think this is the one. I look for pickers, yes. So remember how important those observation values are? Don't limit yourself to pass fail, get detailed, just enough. Don't go crazy, but just go enough, because now I can see how often did we have violations corrected during the initial inspection. I have no idea if I have any, but let's look. Probably not for 2020, it's a demo account. But let's see if we did anything last year. But nonetheless, it will give you that. There we go. So on occupancy, it's not gonna give you the exact occupancy, but it's gonna give you that count. So how often did people correct it on the spot, and what were those? Okay, what were those questions and what occupancy types? So again, that's just one way to tell your story. So great question. All right, closing out today's topic, I want to go to the events module. Again, a core part of your community risk reduction program. I'm going to go to past to show you. All right. Now, if you're doing a social media campaign, check out our video. Let's see. Yeah, check this out from last week on social media, because right here, you can actually help manage your social media campaign using our events module. But for today's purposes, we're going to talk about this one. I'm going to unlock it, going to edit it, and I'm going to go top to bottom kind of quickly here. And we've got the details, but you'll notice I created a category called fire drills, and I created subcategories called fire drills. Now notice how I organized this. I actually typed out fire drill dash 1.pre, 2.elementary. Why? It's just nice and logical and easy to use. Okay. When we did it, if anytime I add personnel, it will automatically calculate that they were there for an hour and 15 minutes. Where it was, a narrative, and again, you will be more specific than this, I'm sure. Who was out there doing it? Points, you can turn that off, but hours, points, and pay grade. And then here is where you document civilians, attending non-personnel. Now, if it were a smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector installation program, you can document that, car seat checks, and so forth. These are hard-coded. We do get that question. Some people would like to add things to this, and we have definitely taken that under advisement. Then you lock the event, click done, and you're good to go, right? But I got to tell my story. So then we go to the reports module. We type in report number 1774. And I want to see for last year, Chief goes, well, you guys got to, you want more money for your, for more materials, you want to get a fire extinguisher trailer or some of the, there's even some virtual reality, super cool virtual reality for teaching people how to put out fires in kitchens and schools. And you want to do that. You're going to go for a grant maybe, but Chief wants to know, well, I got to do a matching fund. Why should I do this? Well, here's why, Chief. And I'm just going to run it for everything, but you can certainly fine tune it for event category and event types. Well, Chief, during elementary schools last year, we went at Henry 529. Now, again, this is just a real simple example of one instance at each school, but imagine all your schools all year. Then you can get some crazy good numbers. I would run this just for fire drills. We did it for everything, but the grand non-personnel total that we connected with this year was 2,219. Chief, say this is 20,000, which is not unlikely in a busy organization with lots of schools and churches and businesses. Chief, we did fire drills, and connected with over 20,000 citizens. Okay, that helps bolster your case. But again, it's hard to measure the fires that never start. But with your community risk reduction and public education program, you're making a difference. And this is one metric. There's others too, but this is one key metric that at least shows you your productivity. So I wanted to show you that before we close out today. Any questions? All right, well, I want to thank you all for participating today, spending close to an hour of your time. I know you're busy taking care of your communities during this time, so thank you. And again, just to recap what we did today, we did a quick overview of some key elements of NFPA 1300. We went into the occupancy module, which is a core part of your risk reduction program on buildings, talked a little bit about inspections, risk assessment using our vision product under the hazards tab, taking advantage of actions, and then we explored some settings that are kind of some nuances in the settings to help you capture data better. We went into the reports for what we call violations. Okay. All these reports that pull from the observation values. So even though it says violations, I want you to know it's pulling data from your observation values. And then to close out today, we spent some time in a very short amount, but a nice overview of the events module and how you want to configure that to optimize your community risk reduction program. And then we looked at report number 1774, which allows you to make the case for how improving your program based on how many non-personnel you've connected with throughout the year, which is a huge part of adding value to your fire department's presence in your community. And that's all I've got. So I wish you all well. Couple things I want to mention in closing. One, we've got these webinars. This is today's right here. So we've got 4 more, and then there's going to be a special one on ICS 214. And ICS 214, if you are looking to get reimbursement from the feds because of the declaration of emergencies or declarations of emergency that have been issued, we try to make it as easy for you as possible. That is report 1797. It populates section 7, which is the most labor intensive part of that form, with your daily log. So you don't have to copy and paste or type, which is a nightmare. So check that out when you get a chance. We're pretty happy with it. Our development team was able to get this done very, very quickly. And then of course, I would recommend that you also, and I'll put this in the chat right now, this page, our blog page, this also has some other articles of things we've done for tracking using the inventory module. So those of you that may not have had our full system, say you're in the state of Pennsylvania and just have the NFPA module, everybody now that uses emergency reporting has the inventory module. And we also have 2 other ones on how we're supporting COVID documentation and the NFPA special studies. So please check those out. I will email all of you those couple documents I mentioned here before the end of the day, and hope to see you next week on our webinars. So thanks everybody. Be safe, and we'll catch you soon.